Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the most thrilling dramas and hidden secrets of your favorite characters. Today is a spectacular day to unravel the tangled webs of deceit, loyalty, and power that keep us all on the edge of our seats. Grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let us explore the explosive dynamics currently rocking the foundations of our beloved hospital. In the high stakes, labyrinthine world of corporate empires and medical emergencies, the battle lines are rarely drawn with absolute clarity. Instead, they are sketched in the shadows of hospital corridors, hidden behind forced smiles, and masked by seemingly innocent gestures of gratitude. Currently, a mesmerizing and utterly unexpected cat and mouse game has ignited between Caroline and Hayley, transforming what was once a straightforward professional and personal dynamic into a masterclass of psychological warfare. This escalating conflict is not merely a petty squabble between two acquaintances, it is a profound struggle for dominance, influence, and the ultimate control over the narrative surrounding one of the most powerful men in their orbit, Bill. The tension between these two women has reached a boiling point, and the fallout threatens to reshape the entire hierarchy of their interconnected lives. To truly understand the gravity of this current standoff, one must first examine the complicated history that binds Caroline and Hayley together. Caroline has long been the fiercely dedicated, incredibly loyal assistant to Bill. For years, she has been the invisible engine keeping his professional and personal life running smoothly, anticipating his needs and protecting his interests with unwavering devotion. During this time, Caroline genuinely believed that she and Hayley shared a bond of friendship. She viewed Hayley not just as a colleague or an associate, but as a trusted confidant within the chaotic whirlwind of their shared environment. Caroline invested her time, her trust, and her emotional energy into cultivating what she thought was a mutual alliance, completely unaware of the Machiavellian undercurrents that defined Hayley's true character. However, the harsh light of reality eventually pierced through Caroline's naive assumptions. As Hayley's ambitions grew and her position secured, she abruptly discarded Caroline, dropping her like a proverbial hot potato. The abandonment was swift, cold, and devastatingly calculated. It was in that painful moment of rejection that the veil was finally lifted from Caroline's eyes. She began to see the stark, unvarnished truth about the woman she had once called a friend. The realization hit Caroline with the force of a freight train. Hayley was a master manipulator, a woman who viewed human relationships not as bonds of affection, but as stepping stones and disposable tools to be utilized and discarded at her absolute convenience. This profound betrayal served as a crucible for Caroline, burning away her naivety and forging a new, hardened exterior that would soon prove invaluable. The catalyst for their current, high-stakes confrontation was a terrifying and sudden health crisis that struck Bill. When the medical emergency occurred, chaos ensued, and the fragile stability of their world was thrown into immediate jeopardy. In that critical life or death moment, it was not the devoted wife who saved the day, but the fiercely loyal assistant. Caroline, utilizing her sharp instincts and deep knowledge of Bill, stepped up and took the decisive actions necessary to save his life. Her timely intervention averted a tragedy, but it also fundamentally altered the power dynamics. By saving Bill, Caroline inadvertently exposed a glaring vulnerability in Hayley's carefully constructed image as the indispensable, perfect partner. Caroline's heroism became an unspoken threat to Hayley's supremacy, setting the stage for an inevitable and explosive confrontation. Recognizing the shifting tides and the dangerous new reality she found herself in, Hayley initiated the first move in what would become a complex psychological chess match. She orchestrated a visit to Caroline, arriving under the guise of overwhelming gratitude. In her hands, She carried a beautifully arranged fruit basket, a classic, quintessential prop of passive aggressive diplomacy. To the untrained observer, the gesture appeared sweet, thoughtful, and entirely appropriate for the situation. It was a physical manifestation of a thank you, a peace offering presented by a relieved wife to the woman who had saved her husband. But Caroline, having been burned by Hayley's manipulative fires before, knew better than to accept this Trojan horse at face value. The encounter that followed was a breathtaking display of subtext and hidden daggers. On the surface, the two women maintained a veneer of absolute cordiality. Their voices were measured, their smiles were fixed, and their body language projected a relaxed friendliness. Yet, beneath this polished exterior, a vicious interrogation was taking place. Every word spoken was a calculated probe, designed to test defenses, uncover weaknesses, and assert dominance. Hayley's primary objective was not to convey genuine thanks, but to assess the threat level Caroline now posed. She needed to know if Caroline intended to leverage her life-saving actions to usurp Hayley's position of influence over Bill. In a desperate bid to reclaim the narrative and assert her unshakable status, Hayley deployed a highly controversial and deeply revealing tactic. She brought up the name of Danny. Danny represents a lingering specter in Bill's life, a figure whose history with Bill has always been a source of profound, unspoken insecurity for Hayley. By deliberately injecting Danny into the conversation, Hayley was attempting to mark her territory. She explicitly stated that Bill loved her far more than he ever loved Danny, a proclamation that reeked of desperation disguised as confidence. Hayley was not just trying to convince Caroline of this fact, she was desperately trying to convince herself. It was a blatant attempt to remind Caroline of the marital hierarchy, reinforcing the boundary between the wife who holds his heart and the assistant who merely manages his schedule. However, Hayley severely underestimated the profound transformation that had taken place within Caroline. The Caroline of the past might have been flustered or intimidated by such a brazen display of territorial dominance, but the new Caroline, hardened by betrayal and empowered by her recent heroics, did not even blink. Instead of retreating, Caroline launched a masterful, icy counteroffensive that struck directly at Hayley's deepest vulnerabilities. With a tone of utter calm and professional detachment, Caroline reminded Hayley of her fundamental duties. She pointedly suggested that Hayley needed to focus on proving she was the worthy wife that Bill truly deserved, especially in the wake of his near-fatal medical event. Caroline did not stop there. She twisted the metaphorical knife with surgical precision. Pivoting seamlessly to the topic of Bill's health, Caroline began issuing strict dietary directives. She instructed Hayley, the woman who ostensibly shared Bill's home and life, on the absolute necessity of preparing low-fat, heart-healthy meals. Caroline emphasized that this was critical to ensure Bill's cardiovascular issues would not flare up again and cause further catastrophic trouble. This was not merely medical advice, it was a devastating psychological blow. By dictating Bill's dietary needs, Caroline was implicitly accusing Hayley of negligence. She was broadcasting the message that while Hayley might hold the title of wife, it was Caroline who possessed the practical knowledge and the genuine care required to keep Bill alive. What makes this dynamic so incredibly fascinating is the hidden advantage that Caroline possesses, an advantage that Hayley is completely blind to. Caroline's confidence is not just born of her recent heroic actions. It is fortified by a secret stream of vital intelligence. Through a series of quiet, strategic conversations with Naomi, Caroline has been gathering a wealth of information. Naomi, operating as a silent observer and confidant, has provided Caroline with deep, unfiltered insights into the reality of Bill's condition and the chaotic events swirling around him. This secret alliance has equipped Caroline with a comprehensive understanding of the battlefield. She knows exactly what is happening behind closed doors, allowing her to anticipate Hayley's maneuvers and counter them with devastating accuracy. As the conversation progressed, the shifting power dynamic became increasingly palpable. Hayley, accustomed to effortlessly controlling the narrative and bending others to her will, found herself struggling to maintain her composure. She desperately tried to steer the conversation, attempting to corner Caroline and force her back into a submissive role. But Caroline was an immovable object. She refused to be led, refused to be intimidated, and refused to play the victim. Instead, Caroline adopted a strategy of terrifying neutrality. She pretended that everything was perfectly normal, utilizing this facade of pleasant indifference to carefully observe Hayley's every micro expression. Caroline was no longer the prey, she was the predator, patiently watching as her opponent flailed in a web of her own making. This encounter fundamentally redefines the concept of a cat and mouse game. In the past, Hayley was undeniably the feline predator, toying with Caroline's loyalties before discarding her. But the roles have now dramatically reversed. Caroline has evolved into a formidable adversary, armed with critical knowledge, unshakable confidence, and the moral high ground of having saved Bill's life. Hayley, meanwhile, is scrambling to maintain her grip on power, her insecurities laid bare by her desperate need to vocalize Bill's love for her. The tension between them is a ticking time bomb, a volatile mixture of past resentments and present ambitions that is destined to explode. Ultimately, the most tragic figure in this entire saga may be Bill himself. Oblivious to the vicious psychological war being waged over his hospital bed and his future, he remains the ultimate prize in this high-stakes contest. As he recovers from his severe cardiovascular crisis, he is entirely dependent on the two women who are currently locked in a battle for supremacy. The question that remains is not just who will win this war of attrition, but what will be left of Bill's life once the dust finally settles. Will Hayley's manipulative machinations ultimately secure her position, or will Caroline's unwavering loyalty and newly discovered strategic brilliance expose Hayley's true nature to the world? As we watch this incredible drama unfold, one thing is absolutely certain. Caroline is no longer the naive assistant waiting for a friend's approval. She is a powerhouse, a woman who has learned the harsh lessons of betrayal and has returned to the battlefield stronger, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. Hayley's fruit basket may have been intended as a symbol of victory, but it has instead become the opening volley in a war that she may not be equipped to win. The corridors of the hospital have never been more treacherous, and the true motives of these characters have never been more thrillingly obscured. We will be watching every glance, analyzing every word, and waiting with bated breath for the next explosive chapter in the saga of Caroline, Hayley, and the fight for Bill's future.